Hi guys, I'm Phill from Australia and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Today we're working on the theme and variations from Norma. You can find the solo part in the back of your Arban book. If you don't have a copy of an Arban book or you'd like the piano music for this, I will leave an affiliate link in the description below where you can get the solo part and the piano part for this solo because I like playing it and I'm sure you'll enjoy playing it too. This is part 3 of the little series that I've put together of showing you guys how I work on it, and you can hear how I've performed it in my album, The Operatic Trumpet, on all streaming services. There are links in the description below for you to go and listen to that too. If you haven't seen part 1 or part 2, I'll leave a card up here and also links in the description below. So go check those out if you're going to work on this with me. Variation 2 is pretty much just triple tonguing, a whole page of triple tonguing with a couple of slurs involved. There's a couple of tips that I like to think about when I'm working on this. The first tip is the syllables in which I use to triple tongue. Especially in fast triple tonguing passages, I like to use the syllables to, do, ku. Using to, do, ku, I find, for me, that I find it rolls off the tongue smoother and faster. I still get nice and firm on all of the articulations, but I just find that the to, do, ku means I'm able to triple tongue at a faster speed and still be clean. The second thing that I like to do when I'm working on a lot of triple tonguing, so this variation, is I like to use wind patterns. Now, wind patterns are when I sing the syllables on the airstream and I just blow the airstream without the horn. So a wind pattern would look like this. And I'm essentially just blowing airstream through my lips like I would an embouchure, and I'm using my tongue to use the articulation to, do, ku. Now the reason I do this is because quite frequently a lot of people when they're triple tonguing, they go too short and they stop the airstream. We need the airstream to be consistently moving so that we can get the sound through the instrument, and it also helps the tongue move faster by having that airstream to kind of flick off of. My third tip that I like to do is I like to practice 2 ways. I practice very, very firmly and slowly, and then very, very fast in short bursts. So we're going to talk about that section right now. Now, when I'm practicing initially, I want to practice very, very slowly and very, very firmly. So by doing that, it'll sound like this. So you can hear that I'm very, very firm and very, very even with the articulation. That is done purposefully so that I know that each note sounds exactly the way I want it to. So by practicing it slowly and very firm, so over the top firm, we want to overdo things. This will fatigue your tongue, so don't expect to do the whole solo or the whole variation in one go. Take as breaks as you need to. The next thing I like to do is to work on the speed, and I'll work on the speed in short bursts, and I'll try to go as fast as I can practically. And that'd be the section that I work on, and I do that a few times at that speed. And then I'd move on to the next passage. So the next line, I'd do the same thing. Ultra fast. And I would use that to work on my speed. Now, in saying that, I can't perform it that fast. I'm not going to perform it that fast. It's way too fast for me to do for the entire page. My tongue would get way too fatigued. So I alternate those 2 combinations, slow and ultra firm and lightning quick. and that helps me boost my speed. Very much like a runner would do. If they want to increase their speed, they'll do interval training, which is sprints, like I did with the fast tonguing. And then if they're working on long distance running, they'll also do long and slow distance, which helps them with the endurance part. So very, very similar approach. Now that we've worked on the technique of triple tonguing, we're going to work on the specifics of the variation. Now, if you look at your part, the second full bar of this variation is, in my opinion, the most technically difficult to actually get right. Now, a couple of tricks that I use to practice this. The first one I'll do is I will triple tongue the first 2 beats and then slur the anchor notes, so that the first of each triplet, the E, C, G, E, of the third and fourth beats. Now, the reason I'll do this is because I want to try and get the airstream going. I don't want to clip any notes short, and it helps me work on the actual shape of the phrase. Right, so I would do that first. So it'd be triple tongue the first 2 beats, shadow play the second 2 beats. It'd sound like this. The reason I would do this is so that I can get the clean articulation of those first 2 beats to set up the third and fourth beat. Now, the third and fourth beat I find the most difficult in this bar, in the whole movement. So by setting up correctly in beat 1 and 2, helps me to achieve beat 3 and 4 cleaner. So I've practiced beat 1 and 2 triple tonguing, 3 and 4 with the anchor notes. Now I'm going to reverse it. I'm going to do beat 1 and 2 with the anchor notes, and then 3 and 4 as written. Now, the anchor notes that I use on this are the G, then C, D. I'm also using the third valve to play that E at the end of that bar as well. Once I've got those 2 sounding good individually, I would then play the whole bar triple tonguing. Once again, slow and steady wins the race, so do it slowly and accurately before you try to add too much speed. Once I've got them working individually quite well, I would then link the 3 different ideas or different ways of practicing together. So I would tongue as written the first 2 beats, and then anchor note the last 2 beats, so beat 3 and 4. Then I would anchor note the first 2 beats and play as written beats 3 and 4. Then I would play the whole bar as written, and I'd take about a bar or a couple of beats off in between. Now work a lot on this bar and find out what the tempo is that you can consistently play that bar at. Because when it comes to performance time, the entire variation is going to be set by the speed you can play that bar at, because it's the most challenging. Once you've got the speed determined, now we're going to start working on the shape and the phrasing. The phrasing's actually written in for us with this. It's quite simple. If you look in the 4th full bar, on beat 3, there's a quaver or an 8th note. That's essentially the end of one phrase and the start of the next phrase. You'll notice that 4 bars later again, we have a quaver rest. That's the next phrase. Then 2 bars later, there's another quaver rest, 2 bars, and then it's pretty much to the end of the variation. So the first phrase, I would put a backwards arrow over the first 2 beats of that 4th bar so that I can get a breath in after that D, but it also sounds musical without being hurried. Take note on how in that 4th bar, the 4th full bar, I brought back in tempo, so I put a slight slow down on beats 1 and 2. I took my breath, and then I still kept the rest of that in that slightly slower tempo before I picked up the tempo again at the start of the 5th full bar. Have another listen. I exaggerated at that time so that it really stood out as to what I was doing. Now the second phrase, we don't really need to do as much of a roll there. All right, we can do a little roll and a little pull up at the end of the phrase to make it sound finished, but the G chromatic scale at the end of this phrase helps it sound like the end of a phrase. Now on this fourth line, we have chromatic scales going up from B in the stave to G above the stave. Now a little mind trick that I use to help with the crescendo and the diminuendo is, instead of thinking up and down like a lot of people would naturally do because the line is going up and down, try to think forwards as your crescendo and backwards as your diminuendo. Now there's just a little trick that I use that really helps me get control of the section and have it sound nice. Now, once we get to the seventh line, we've got semiquavers added in here to create a bit of difference of what we're doing. Make sure the semiquavers are in time. Don't rush them. If you need to, put a tenuto or hold the first one a little bit longer. That way, it'll help them stand out a bit more and create a little bit more interest. You'll also notice that, as we were talking in the previous ones with the ba-dum, the lead-in, this lead-in here is actually a full crotchet or a quarter note. So make sure that that's a full length quarter note before you move on. Go and have a listen to the album. It helps you learn the piece. You can also get a better feel for how I'm shaping things with the piano and an actual recording rather than just this video to help. If you haven't yet already, hit that subscribe button and tick the bell notification so you can stay tuned for more videos. Next week, we're going to come back with the final variation for the theme and variations from Norma. As always, I'm Phill from Australia, and happy practicing.